It's the Sod Pod, brought to you by Grassland Agro. The Sod Pod. Hello, and welcome to episode 24 of the Sod Pod. In the last episode, we had a chat with the newest additions to the team, Lauren Stanley and Claire Aspel. We talked many topics from grass management, sulphur, and what solutions we need for a sustainable future. And on this episode, we are joined by John Maher, Teagasc Grass10 manager. Johnny O'Loughlin and Davy Corbett headed off down to Moorepark to chat with him. This is an extended episode, which I'm sure you'll find super insightful. Over to John.
John, we're delighted to have you join us here today on the Sod Pod. Thanks very much for coming on.
Thank you, John.
You're a reluctant participant, maybe we might say.
You could say that.
John Maher, that is the coordinator of the Grass10 programme, probably one of the leading men. Now John's blushing for anyone that's listening in Grassland Management in the whole country, and we're delighted to have him join us. We're obviously very proud sponsors of the programme. Myself and Dave do a bit of judging with John as well, which is always a very entertaining process, would say, John.
We try our best.
you try to keep us guessing anyways, John, in relation to
a bit like Brian Cody, John, yes.
That's a very, very good analogy. Yeah, keep everyone guessing, like, no, don't get complacent or anything like that. So we usually get a call.
Or carried away.
You do your best on that one, John. But John, maybe for people that don't know, and a lot maybe people do already, but what is the Grass10 and where did it come from?
I suppose, look, Grass10 is about doing a better job at grazing, John. That's the fundamental principle of it. It's called 10 because we're trying to maybe achieve 10 grazings per paddock per year. We know that the very best farms can do that if they set the farm up right and do it well. And there's many pieces to that jigsaw. It's also called Grass10 because we're trying to utilise 10 tonnes of grass per hectare, right? In order to do that, then you have to grow about 13 or 14 tonnes. That's the broad thrust of the programme. But I suppose the principles go back to very, very basics that I learned about now almost 30 years ago, John. But anyway, but I've never. But to be fair, I've never forgotten it. And the principle is very, very simple. When the animal's out grazing, you know, the animal feeds itself and spreads its own slurry. Once the animal comes inside, then things are very, very different. The costs go up. You're feeding the animal. You're spreading the slurry.
Yeah, that's
very true. We probably took our eye off the ball for a while, John, and it is going back to basics, like.
Yeah, well, that's why, you know, John asked the question where the Grass10 campaign came out of, right? So obviously there was quotas there in different forms and fashion for most livestock enterprises. To be honest, I suppose the truest one was of obviously milk production, but then, you know, quotas left us in the year 2015. Therefore, people were starting to carry more animals and, you know, up the performance on the farm. There's no point in upping the performance, you know, using silage or ration to do that. So basically, we had to grow more grass, utilise that grass. And in 2017, the Grass10 campaign landed running. So this started forming in 15, 16. We did a lot of events around the country in the spring and the autumn, and we said we better package this in a more structured format, bring training to the industry, bring training to farmers, bring training to our own advisors, and move on with this. And that's the genesis of it, yeah.
And you might explain, John, how it started. Like, what was the competition in 2017, and how was it evolved?
Yeah, so
like the 10 is obviously the backbone of it.
Yeah, so there's many pieces to it, which I suppose we'll go through in this podcast. But we needed also a kind of a flagship, or to see what the best farmers were doing out there, and using that competition then and the winners from that competition as ambassadors for grass, or making a big contribution to what can be achieved with grazing on farm, whether it's sheep, whether it's cattle, whether it's cows. So we also, you know, have categories for clover now, which is a good thing to have given what's coming around the corner. We also have categories for, you know, heavy land, young farmers. So it just had to recognise all the pieces of the jigsaw in assessing the farms, but also to recognise those who were working in that industry, whether they're on heavy land, dry land, young, you know, established. The new entrants have a great track record in this competition, so you have it all.
And it's a good point because there's an ambassador there for every sort of a farm. Like, as you say, heavy farms, and I know farmers that often complain, like John there, John's from Kilmaley, he often forgets where he's from. And we might come back to that there in a while, because you were probably on the farm in Kilmaley when it was set up originally and running and whatnot, and there's stories of that.
There is.
But look, we'll come back to it. There's an ambassador there for every farmer in the country on heavy land, dry land, every sort of a scenario, situation. That they can benchmark themselves off.
Yeah, and you can see then people making improvements every year as they go on the competition. Yeah, we had a beef farmer last year, which, you know, Aidan Maguire, who won the dry stock category in that competition, right? And for him to turn, you know, animals out in late January, early February for 2 or 3 hours and bring him in again, like, it's hard enough to get that concept across on you know, dairy farms, but a beef farmer to organise, to do this, to control the silage intake, the animals run up along the central roadway on the farm, graze for 2 or 3 hours, then Aidan goes out, opens the wire, lets him back in, eat the silage, and they start the cycle all over again. The big thing for him, you know, when you're in the beef industry, the cost of production and margins are tight, so every piece of advantage that can be gained, you have to try. So he said, if dairy farmers could do it, why couldn't I? And
it's a livestock system, a grazing system. It's not a beef or a dairy farm.
It is a grass-based system. Yeah. And he just put the simple technology and said, you know, if we can train the dairy cow to do it, why can't we train, you know, dairy beef to do it?
I was on that farm with you, John, as well, when we were judging, and I think, like, we were walking along. So for the context of anyone who enters and the judging process, like, John sends us, you know, the location and the time, probably the night before at 11 o'clock, and then we that's unfair now, John.
That would be unfair, yes.
Yeah. No, we got at least 3 days notice, but then we were able to go to the farm.
But they're picked already before that.
But the big thing is that, like, we went to that farm, and
we just lost a judge there, David.
We went to that farm, and, you know, we arrive, and Aidan and we introduced ourselves to Aidan, and Aidan gave us a background, and we were walking that farm with Aidan. I remember as we were walking along, you know, the two of us were kind of side by side, and you just said to me and said, wow, this is serious, you know, like that. It was really, you know, you could feel it, and it was a fantastic privilege on my behalf, joking aside, to be there as a judge to come across that story, John.
Yeah, we've had many great stories in the Grassland Farm of the Year competition, but I would say, John, that day was just something. Yeah, it was
really,
a
bit of magic
special.
or something.
It was, you know, complete innovation in terms of how to approach grazing with you know, dairy beef cattle. So they're about 300 kilos, 250 kilos live weight, being trained to go out and graze grass and do the job.
And a lower demand, like, so it should be harder to get through grass and graze it out properly, like, but it was just phenomenal, like, and brilliant farmer, brilliant person, and like, that's been backed up. There's lots of brilliant winners. We had, you know, Danny Birmingham, when you referenced a feature on this podcast. We have Mike Birmingham come on as well. He's on, I met you both recently, and I said you're both on the hit list, and we will get to Mike. But there's some brilliant stories there through all the categories. But I suppose we might just go to finish out the Grass10. It's more than just a competition, John. There's a huge...
No, so the Grassland Farm of the Year competition is the flagship, and it lets you go on to the best farm, see what they're doing. The award winners then have an event on their farm. We include them in, you know, some of our Grass10 newsletter pieces, other ways of communicating, either be through social media or podcasts, or whatever the case may be. So they always have a story to tell around grass, and, you know, that's the flagship of the competition, or of the campaign, the competition. But in relation to the rest of Grass10, then, you know, the day-to-day job is really about Grass10 courses, which myself, I covered most of the Munster area. There's 3 of us involved. John Douglas does more the eastern side of the country and up into the northeast, and then Joe Dunphy does, you know, the corner of the west and the northwest. So we provide courses basically throughout the month. We meet once a month on a host farm. Sometimes we move around the farm. Sometimes we have a host farmer the host farmer generally is our main model of doing things, in which they will say to you, this is where we are, this is where we want to get to, and then we trash that out with them on the farm. And the rest of the farmers who come and learn from that process as well, they bring their figures, they get challenged, they challenge the farmer. So it's all about learning and to learn to improve. So that happens then from, we generally start at the end of January and finish around now and review the year for both the host farmer and for the farmers involved in the courses.
There's one thing you brushed over there, John, was the newsletter. It's a super piece of, I suppose, equipment a farmer can have in the toolbox every week. So maybe just advise the farmer how they can sign up for it, because it's a go-to week on week.
There's a lot of people involved now in Grass10. I've given you the three main characters, right, that are on the ground, but there's a lot of people who do a lot of work in the background to help this happen. Like, obviously you yourselves have involvements, but there's people here in Teagasc to help us out as well. So Maher, who's in charge of PastureBase, he provides all that information. The Grassland Science Department, they have a lot of input into it as well, and they also do the grass prediction models, and they've developed that over time. They use the data from farms, data from Maher, and data from med stations to try and give people a handle of what's coming down the road. You talk about grass and the Grass10 campaign, David. One of the things about grass is it's not like silage or meal. Like, grass changes every week, every month, every season, every year. It's never constant. It's a movable feast. It requires management, and because it's movable, there are tools there to help you manage that movement from, say, bad weather in March to, good weather in September. And equally, a March can be good and September can be bad. And you have to have the tools available to do that. Yeah. So to go back to the Grass10 newsletter then, what that does is published every week between about the 1st of February to about the 1st of December, updating things on growth, soil temperature to start of the year. There I mentioned the word rainfall, but where the targets should be, whether you're dry stock or whether you're dairy, whether you're stocked high, stocked low. We do features on clover, features from heavy farms, or people who farm on heavy lands. So just to try and quantify what's happening every week in relation to grasslands, north, south, east and west. So, that information is put together by largely Maher and John and Joe on Monday evening, Tuesday morning, to be released on Tuesday evening then to the industry. So it goes to, people who farm every day, people who are service providers to those farmers, yourselves, our industry, our own advisors, whatever the case would be. Yeah. It's all there.
And John, you mentioned something there as well, was grass, and it changes month by month, week by week, and I think that's very important. And there was a previous colleague of yours, Matt Ryan. Yes. And he worked as a dairy specialist together. But one thing he used to mention was, and I heard him often say it was, 60% of your profitability on farm is made up of chlorophyll. And Joe, wondering what are these lads on about chlorophyll, whatever. And I was saying myself that day at the farm walk, and tell you, you think about it. Chlorophyll is obviously driving photosynthesis, and that is essentially your solar panel on the farm.
That's exactly it.
That's driving grass production. And it's the same thing if you think of a solar panel on the shed at home. If it's damaged or dirty or anything, it's affecting how much energy it's converting from sunlight to energy that's usable. And the same thing as the plant. The plant, you want the plant to be healthy so it can convert that solar energy into plant available energy as such. But it's just trying to understand that plant and how it's working. And I think what farmers should be doing is every day they go out to walk the farm, there's always something that's affecting that plant. Every day.
Completely.
There's always something. It never reaches its full potential.
Yeah, so you have weather factors. We don't need to talk about that in the last while. Yeah, right? But then you have factors that are below the soil, and that's where it all starts. Like the root is, we have our solar panel, but it's the root that converts all that into growth. And if the roots of the grass plants are compromised in whatever fashion, be it basic things like soil fertility or compaction or whatever the case may be, then we have a problem. So, and the root thing really comes into its own in the next 2 months, because that's what keeps the plant going. And if they're compromised, then you're in trouble. And look, you don't need me to remind you about the story of the importance of phosphorus in the spring, the importance of K in the summer, the importance of lime. You know, allowing you to get at that P, get at that K, stop the nitrogen loss. You need a story.
We've been talking about it for years, but it's back to basics.
Absolutely. Yes. So one of the basic things we did at the start was, while we wanted to achieve 10 grazings and grow 13 or 14 tonnes to eat 10 tonnes of grass per hectare, while we focus on the management above the soil surface, we also had to keep an eye on what's happening below the surface. That still remains a serious challenge for the industry. It's even whatever about back then. There was some ways of compensating against it, right? A bit, not completely, but now with the price of fertilizer and the restrictions on fertilizer nitrogen in particular, if you're compromised on P, K, and especially lime, that nitrogen is lost. And at €1,000 a tonne, my God, this is going to hurt. And if you only a limited amount, which we're doing going forward, and the P's and K's and lime are wrong, well, there's going to be inefficiencies and losses, and with restrictions and challenges around water quality and the price of fertilizer, we just have to get a lot smarter at this very, very quickly now.
Yeah,
very quickly.
We could, I suppose why we really want to get you on as well, John, is obviously something that's really important, and we've been focused on with farmers, is that correcting your soil fertility, your soil biology, your soil structure. But something that's absolutely crucial is utilising grass. So obviously it takes nitrogen to grow grass. If we're growing grass and we're leaving it behind us, it's a sin nearly. It's lost money, it's wasted money.
Correct. Yeah. And look, the reality is that there's 5 or 6 sources of nitrogen coming into the system. We'll all know the fertilizer one, and that's the one that we, that's the one we rely on the most. But things are going to change now. We have source of nitrogen from the soil, source of nitrogen from recycling of dung and urine. We have sources of nitrogen from previous fertilizer applications. We have nitrogen coming from clover and other sources. So we have to capitalise on all that. And the challenge now for us really has gone from trying to grow as much grass as possible. And you can't look at this in isolation anymore. When you talk about grass tonnes, you have to relate back to what the nitrogen input is as well, and where all those nitrogen sources come from. And we know that we need a certain amount of nitrogen to grow 14 tonne of grass, and that will come from all the sources we outlined. But if you are only growing 12 tonne of grass and using the same amount of total nitrogen, well, then there's inefficiencies here, and it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you both environmentally and cost your pocket. So the challenges have slightly changed. We still want to grow as much grass as we can on the farm, but it has to be quantified in relation to the amount of fertilizer or amount of nitrogen coming into the system. So, and we have to avoid those losses, John. Yes,
John, I was looking at a paper from the Dairy Mills Group, mid 2000s, average nitrogen application 370 kilos per hectare. So I suppose it goes back to what you're saying, the tools we have changed, and even that's reflected in, I suppose, the competition, the Grass10, not just the competition, the Grass10 program. So the Clover report, or if you take the newsletter, the focus of all your groups that you're doing, John and Joe are doing, Clover is very, very important. Are you 100% happy with it? I'm just going to ask. And are you... can you tell us a story maybe of a farmer from any of those groups who's getting the real best out of it?
Yeah, no, are we happy? Yes. In terms of the technology, absolutely no issue. However, John, we talked about soil fertility. We know grass is sensitive to lime, P and K. Clover's even more sensitive, right? Yeah. So we've got to get this right. And the ask is big and the time frame is short. So the technology is there. It's only a matter of trying to get it onto farm. It requires change, and really this is what this is all about, is change. However, if you're able to embrace the change and learn as you go along, then this will come right. You mentioned there about the fertilizer, John. Just go back in history, when we looked at back before quotas went, we go back to, I suppose 2009 was a scary year because the data started coming out from Johnstown Castle and David Wall in particular, if I remember correctly. when we looked at, say, the usage of P and K in 1990 versus what it was in 2009. Now, 2009 was a brutally difficult year. It was wet. Milk prices were low.
Poor fertiliser prices high.
Yeah, correct. Right. And P and K levels went down to a third of what was applied in 1990. Yeah. So that dawned on us very, very quickly that things had to change. Lime also halved from 83 and 84. So that started that process. And, you know, while we have made good progress, we still have a long way to go. So, you know, and you talk about the nitrogen levels, and people were using nitrogen to compensate because it was actually quite cheap back 10, 15, 20 years ago. Right? And we're using that to compensate for grass growth, albeit, you know, grass production was somewhat limited because of stocking rates and quotas and stuff like that. People only had so much quota per acre and stuff like that, or per hectare. So things then start evolving and changing. And now, we have to be way more conscious of the inputs relative to the outputs. So, you know, we have now farmers who can grow 14 tons of grass with, you know, 150 kilos of nitrogen, which is about 120, 125 units, thereabouts, 120 units, I suppose, right, with massive clover input. Now, they are at top of their game, and clover is a more demanding plant in terms of management than grass. People don't realise that. But the tools are there, right, to help you get the best out of clover and to get the best out of the sward of the future, which will be grass come clover.
And it's you know, it was going back again to the basics. Like, it's nearly cyclical, you know, that we went away from maybe the clover, and sometimes we considered it as a weed.
Yeah, I suppose that's been expressed, but you know, you go back to times of our ancestors; they were much better doing the lime P and K story. And
what's worrying, John, though,
fertilizer nitrogen was a different ball game back then, wasn't he? Starting off in terms of technology. Yeah. We did have one or two blips along the way with clover, in that, how to put it to you, that we probably had the wrong varieties at certain times. They weren't nitrogen tolerant. We weren't as sharp as we should be. But, like, you know, a lot of the sharpness went out of the industry there for a spell when quotas came in. In the mid-80s.
That's very fair.
And it just, like, if I had Tim Gleeson standing here now or sitting on this podcast with us, John, all right, he'd tell you the first thing he would say to you was quotas came, lime halved, right? And that's the basics of soil fertility, and he never forgives quotas for that
the reduction in
lime, because that releases the nitrogen from the soil, it releases the P and K, it stops the nitrogen losses, you know, it gets the grass to grow better, particularly in the shoulders. All those things that we take for granted now but are important.
So it was great to see last year that how we did increase the lime and how the focus is put back on it just when things get tough. But I think on that 2009, you mentioned 2008, 2009 there, like, there was a residual effect of that. Like, the soil fertility did reduce, John, didn't it? I probably only bounced back there in the last maybe 2 years.
No, we've made the turn, which is great. But 2009 was our lowest ebb.
Yeah, but there was kind of an effect then on soil fertility, I suppose, after that.
Yeah, and we are making progress. There's no denying that.
Definitely,
And you know, some people sometimes complain about their phosphorus allowance, right? But if you keep soil testing, that will come right. But you have to keep soil testing. But there's no restrictions on, you know, lime. There's no restrictions on K, right? And it's a little bit unfortunate in that the three main pieces of the soil fertility story of lime, P and K, they're all affected different ways. It's not as if they're all affected, you know. Phosphorus is mined out of the farm by what goes out the gate. K is, in theory, should be fine. Not much goes out the gate, but it's the recycling of the slurry and the silage that goes wrong. Then the rainfall does wreck to lime, and the more you're on the western coast, the worse that is. Do you know?
Thomas McCarthy down in Johnstown Castle, actually, we were at the... What was that, John? The Irish Fertiliser Association walk, was it? Yeah. Thomas McCarthy was giving a talk on clover and potash, and he's found unbelievable results and responses from potash to clover. And it would be very interesting to see to get maybe a bit of research done in Ireland on the phosphorus side of things and clover, Just
yeah,
because,
I read a paper there from Murray et al. Actually came out of this stable here that where we are in Moorepark. And there's a direct correlation between phosphorus content or phosphorus
clover content
and clover content, phosphorus level and clover content, yeah.
So to go back to the P&K story, yes, we've made progress, but a bit like our friends in Fianna Fáil, a lot done, more to do, if that's all right to say. Right, so
but we've hit a pothole this year, John.
Mm-hmm.
We've hit a pothole this year.
Yes, which is unfortunate. I think we were on the right track. People were getting better at the whole soil fertility, getting better at the slurry management on the farm. We were going well. Obviously then things changed, John, I accept that. I actually think we made progress most of all in lime. David, I agree with you on that. The figures would show that. I remember Mark Plunkett, who does this for us in Teagasc, and tracks all this, and he sent me an email one day, John, for the first time in a long time we broke 1 million tonnes, so we had to get back up to 2 million, but we're on that road. Yeah, the results this year of the fertiliser sales, John, you're aware of that as well. Seamus Carney from Signpost put some data together for that. Us very quickly back there towards the end of the fertiliser season in early September, and I was, to put it mildly, shocked, disappointed. I would have expected nitrogen sales to be down given the price. That didn't surprise me. That didn't surprise me. The horror story was the P&K. To see a 30% drop in P&K, and actually, the P&K products were the value for money purchases in 2022, right? And people decided, no, we'll actually cut back our nitrogen, but we'll cut back the P&K more, which, you can't have one without the other. Like, you can buy all this nitrogen, but if your P&K is not right, you're going to have losses, and the lime is even worse. So it wasn't good news, and it's a bit of a setback. And if we're going to go down the clover road, it's the P&K has to jump substantially up in terms of application across all farms.
It should be the reverse. We should be up 30% and down 30%, and then up 30% in P&K, and down 30%, and then fix it. Get it for nothing.
So that's a bit concerning. Yeah, no doubt about it.
But listen, it's very interesting as well, John. Like, you've seen a couple of changes. Like, you're quite confident about the dairy industry probably predominantly going forward, or the livestock grass-based system is very resilient to the environmental challenges, and it has very strong sustainability credentials. And I think we probably need to be better at telling that story.
Yeah, people forget it, because a lot of the hang up in sustainability tends to focus on other areas, that mightn't be as rewarding. Like, to go back to the first simple principle, right, of grazing, if the animals outside, right, they're feeding themselves and they're spreading their slurry. So then once they're spreading the slurry, like things like ammonia emissions, carbon emissions associated with slurry, methane losses, they're all going to be way, way down once you're out grazing. You extend the grazing season, it's a win. I remember the first work that, say, Lawrence and his team did here with greenhouse gas measurements, and it goes back to the Moorepark booklet, I think it's in 2014 or something, Open Day, if I remember correctly, or 16.
And that wasn't in vogue at the time?
No, but what it showed was that, once you brought silage into the diet or other feeds, the quality is not as good. And once the quality is down, methane goes up. If you graze the right grass, it has the highest quality, therefore methane emissions are lower. So the higher the quality of the feed, right, and the more you get your grazing management right, the lower the methane emissions. Is some work that Michael Donovan and his team did as well, and Lawrence put some of that together. So I remember that being published, and nobody will ever say to you, God, if I graze quality grass, my methane emissions will go down.
Yeah.
They don't say that. Now, people like us know that, but it's people forget that other things start to matter more, and I know we need them, but like feed additives. But if we just started with the basics of grazing, we'd reduce the methane emissions very, very quickly.
Well, we could probably capture that through PastureBase Ireland as well, which is a hugely valuable tool.
And I have colleagues who give out to me and say, right, geez,
no one would give out to you.
Yeah, they would.
Who's that, John?
Right.
Do you want to name them?
Who's giving out to you?
We're around here now, John. We'll give you a backup for today.
They're not from Cork or Kilkenny anyway. Let's put it that way. Right?
John, I'm not going to start guessing with me.
But anyway, you can start guessing. Yeah. But they will say to you, like, yes, John, Grass10 painting is going as well. We can see progress. We see, wins on soil fertility. We see wins on grazing management. We see wins on PastureBase. We see wins in terms of, be it meat or milk production from grass. We see those wins. There's no denying that. However, one thing you pick up from the Grass10 newsletter, David, that you mentioned is that when it comes to mid-season, the pre-grazing yield or the grass that the animals are going into remains a small bit stubbornly high now. And once you get into, grazing stronger grass, therefore you get into stem, therefore you get into, more dead material, you don't graze out as well, the next rotation's under pressure. So once the animal chews more, that means we're chewing the cud more, therefore we've more methane losses. So the leafier the grass, right, the easier for the animal to do their job. We will produce more, we will lower the emissions. The next time round, that grass is good because the animal will graze it down well. But if you go into the wrong grass, and it's about this 3-leaf principle, which some people struggle to grasp, and it is difficult, I don't deny that, because not every leaf is the same, and the grass plants, the third one matters more than the first one, but the fourth one is cruel altogether because that means the first one is dying and the stem is coming. So you have to get that principle, and you must enter the grass at the right stage. You go too early and the animal's working too hard, you go too late, yes, there's plenty of feed there, but performance will decline, your milk and meat will drop, the greenhouse gas emissions go up, and then you have to fight stem the next time around as well. So that's critical. Yeah.
There's a lot of quick wins on farm before you ever start, as you said, bringing in additives or whatever.
Absolutely.
And another one there is actually the value of grass, and like the 270 is probably the value of every day at grass in springtime. I'm afraid
that's gone way, way higher in the last...
That's what I'm getting at, yeah.
Yes, in 2022 that went up. Well over 3.
What would you put 3?
Our quick estimates would suggest close to 4. Right.
Savage.
Right.
Big money.
And now that's based on two things, right?
€4 per cow per day.
Based on milk price.
Yeah. There's a milk price piece in it, right? Because milk price has gone up. But let's be clear, the price of ration at the moment, the price of silage at the moment,
replacement.
Right, and the expected prices for ration next spring will bring grass close to €4 per cow per day.
So that's...
And bring the beef one from less than €2 closer to €2.50 or even closer to €3 per livestock unit per day.
That is massive.
It is. It's serious.
John, this is my own opinion now, and you can tell me I'm wrong and I won't be offended, but something that I see on... you will probably say that anyways. Dave is going to say anyways, yeah. So one of the things I see...
In true Brian Cody fashion, we will say, best of luck with that, John. Off you go.
One of the things I feel that maybe pitfall farmers fall into is underestimating covers. Do you agree?
Completely.
No, thanks, Brian.
Completely. Look, let's be clear, most people in life, I suppose, and, we're all the same. Generally, I could be wrong on that now, but this is the way I am anyway, right?
You're only wrong once, John.
No, but you remember the ones you lost, right? More than the ones you win, right? That's the way that's the one, and... being a Kilkenny person in Cork, I get reminded of that very often, right? But, thank God it lashed rain in 1999. That's all I say, and they all went home. But anyway, we'll move on. The reason I say that then is that, people will remember 2009, they'll remember 2012, the spring of 13, 2018. These years are steeped in people don't remember 17, right? Right, it had a slightly wet back end because the heavy soils farmers told me that. But me Hall O'Leary will tell you that's the best grass production year, but nobody remembers that for 17. Yeah. But they remember the bad years, and when you remember the bad years, and being short, right? Nobody wants to be short, and then when you comes to grass, you'll always say, "Sure, I'll err on the side of caution." And even though it's 1,600 you know, or we want them into 1400, be brave, and they go, I'll delay 1 or 2 days. And the 1 or 2 days are the difference between 1400 and 1600, and then that's how the cycle starts slightly going wrong on you. Yeah. So yes, I agree with your.
And then sometimes when farmers see the massive growth rate from your covers over 1,000, they say, "Jeepers, I'll leave another day and I'll grow an extra 200 for the same." Do you know? But it is a huge one that we have to maybe get better at, and there's huge wins there on methane. On how would the farmer best do that, John? Your opinion? Yeah. How like, is it going to the course? Like, every farmer should join the Grass10 course probably at some stage, or has graduated from it. Yeah,
well, that's part of it. I don't deny that. But look, if you go back to the start of grass measurement, which started back in the 80s, if you want to be, this is the time I can remember, or the people who will tell you about this, and they use the black box approach, right? And the black box approach was a New Zealand concept by a Grassland researcher there. This is where I pick up the first piece of this jigsaw on grass measurement. But basically, it was walking the farm, John. If you walk the farm, you will see.
Simple as that.
So he didn't do anything with numbers. It was a guy called Arnold Bryant, right? And he didn't do anything with numbers. He just put 3 or 4 black boxes around the farm, met the farmers every week, and they were able to relate the grass to the black box. Now, the reason they picked the black box was this the black box recorder on planes. That's how this concept started, because unfortunately there was a generation of plane crashes in the 80s, which you two guys are too young to remember. But anyway, we have to find the black box recorder. Yeah. So that's how it started. But it's a little bit unfortunate the way grass grows, John, and you touched on this, right? So when we say the average growth rate is 60, right? Mm-hmm. That's the average of, we'll say, about paddock day 8, 9, 10 in a 20-day rotation. About that, right? But at day 3 or 4 or 5, that growth is only 30 or 40. The problem being is the last 2 or 3 days. If the average growth rate is 60 on the farm, the paddock immediately ahead to be grazed is growing 100, 120 a day. So in 2 days, it puts on 200, 250. And that's the difference between, going into the 1400 and the 16 or 1700.
That's the difference between senior and intermediate.
Okay.
To be fair.
Yeah, I suppose that's a very fair comment, yes. Right, so, if you're walking the farm, and we have people of all ages doing this, but the one thing is that you walk the farm, and you have to be that little bit braver. Right, and it's a confidence thing.
There's That's a big one, John.
Because if you've measurements, that will give you confidence. Or if you walk the farm, If you don't walk the farm, you don't know. And if you don't know, then you're going to play conservative.
It's a huge one, John. And I always say, if talking to a group or talking to anyone, is that Aidan and the boys in the journal aren't going to land down and put you on the front if you get it wrong. They're not going to say, "Oh, John Maher got his grass walk wrong and took out too much." Because usually when we go to make corrective action, even then, we don't fully commit to it. Isn't that fair?
Correct, yeah. Or if you delay and then you realise you shouldn't have delayed, then you overreact. And, it's consistency, but the very best people will walk the farm in the same routine, every 5, 6, 7 days, and they get into that and they gain confidence from it. So that's the first starting point. All right. I admit now you need all the other things right, like soil fertility, the nitrogen management, the paddock infrastructure in terms of paddocks and all that. But walking will tell you an awful lot.
John, if a farmer wants to get into grass measuring, and there probably are a lot of farmers out there that may be thinking about it, I know legislation maybe is making farmers do farm walks, but I reckon farmers maybe want to get into it because of the price of inputs, because of the price of meal, fertilizer, manage whatever fodder they're growing on the farm. So how would you advise a farmer maybe to start into it? Maybe they're just afraid of getting into it. I don't know how.
We've been carrying out the grass courses for the last few years, and they have to evolve. There's people who've improved their grazing management massively, and we challenge them now to bring in the clover piece, John. So they have to move on, right, to deal with try and get the grazing tonnage with a lower nitrogen fertilizer input, and that requires all the pieces of jigsaw of soil fertility, grassland management, all those things that matter, right? Reseeding, all that, and then there's others like David and we are prepared to do that, right? There are people who want to start grass measurement now, because the environment is changing, because the ask is big, because there's change coming. They realise that and hear that if you're going to do clover, your grazing management has to be at the upper end, right? It has to be more intermediate or senior rather than junior, John, to use your terminology.
I don't know why you pointed at me in the junior comment, John, but
well,
I think that's the truest thing I said all day, John.
Well, he has moved from Clare to Kilkenny, so right. But like all things being said, David, the fact that he's moved suggests that he's trying to improve his hurling ability.
Cody asked me to come up.
But to come back to it, we are going to start courses next year, David, and go back to the start for those who want to learn. So Grass10 will do that. Right, we'll be sending out notification to the Grass10 newsletter through the industry, through our own advisors, through December and January. If you want to start and want to learn, we'll start from scratch on the whole piece. Right, so that's our plan for next February.
That's brilliant. It's very safe space as well, John. I know from chatting to yourself and John. You can come know nothing, like, do you know,
absolutely,
and you bring them full way in the journey. And it's, you know, like, in fairness to yourself now and the two lads, like, you're very approachable, very easy to get on with. Except when it comes to hurling, obviously, with yourself, John.
Well, if you throw in the ball, or you suggest that.
Yeah, it's like Tommy Watts. Tommy Watts when he hit the ref.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
What you're like. But no, but that's brilliant. So they can get the course is a big message for people who aren't doing it. And then we say, is there going to be, for the lads who are maybe going into the clover side of it, will that be covered? So, like, for
so we have those who want to move on from the grass piece and start doing the clover piece. So we'll have the Grass10 courses built around that. But we also work with the projects here in Moorepark, and there's clover in all the Teagasc research institutes now. There's a project going here at the moment with Michael Egan, and there are clover farms in that project that's quantified now. And look, our plan is to go out onto farm or the research centres right throughout the season, probably 5 or 6 times, right? Bring people and do the workshop approach. People have been visiting, all the Teagasc centres to see what's going on in terms of clover. I think now we need to move on to farm, to be honest. They come back with a great message from it, but implementing that message, the seed is sown. It's now time to get the plant to germinate, John, I suppose, if that's all right. So we're going to move out onto farm, workshop approach, probably start in January to get the seed sown in the farmer's head, then get into March, April, May to get the seed sown on the farm, and then the management from there. So yes, this is part of our programme for next year.
It's part of the mandate, yeah, brilliant, because it's like some of the clovers you see here are in Grange. We're in Grange there recently.
Phenomenal.
Exceptional. I was thinking about it, John. Regardless of what sort of enterprise you're in, and it goes back to Aidan Maguire again, go to Grange. If you're making cows, doesn't matter. You don't have to be calf to beef, or go up and see what the lads are doing there.
No, I saw it myself. I think it was 3 weeks ago. In fairness to Peter Doyle and his team up there, I couldn't get over it. It was phenomenal.
Yeah,
phenomenal.
You oversowed. Do you know when you're going down on that trail where Peter is on the left hand side?
Yeah,
exceptional, John.
Yeah. And some of it reseed, some of it oversown.
The oversown was more impressive,
absolutely,
because it's harder to
do. He's the first to say that the weather landed right for him, but in fairness, they made it happen, got the thing right. To see the clover there in October was phenomenal.
Yeah, but loads of people got the weather as well, so John, they must be doing something right. But John, just before we finish up, there's a couple of big names who've won the Grass10 competition, because I suppose we're actually in the process of doing the judging now, and really exciting, brilliant cohort of farmers in it again this year. Go back through some of the winners there, John, and maybe some of the key things that we would have taken from them as an industry, because I know from Eddie O'Donnell or whatever, you would have seen, was he the inaugural winner?
He was, and there was a farmer in it that year called Niall O'Mara, and I never forget some of the things that he said to us on the day. To be fair to him, we're grass farmers who produce beef, right? Not the other way around.
Yeah,
beef farmers who graze grass. No, we're grass farmers who just happen to produce beef.
Some statement, isn't it?
Absolutely. That was one in that year. The following year, then we bumped into your friend Mr. Birmingham in West Clare.
That's right.
It's all about Clare here today, anyway. Right? Yeah. But anyway, and his motto was very simple: we graze when we can.
Simple as that.
Haven't forgotten it. One of
the lads was passing Danny Birmingham's the other day, and he sent me a Snapchat of him, and he was saying there was cows out. and like the weather is as bad as it is, and his farm is as tough as it is. That's remarkable.
John, you've seen a lot of farms in your day now, but I know personally anyway, I put Danny's up there with one of the most difficult farms I've ever witnessed.
Absolutely. No disagreement. And look, he's in a programme with the heavy soils. He's been in programs with Kerry and Teagasc in the past and all that, but it is a difficult farm. There's no denying that. But like Danny being Danny, and he won't mind me saying this, like ever the optimist, right? But like just to arrive on that farm on that day, we graze when we can. Like there's people on dry land won't go out on wet days.
I've heard stories of Danny that he'd be up in the morning, and before he'd ever go milking the cows, he'd be on PastureBase Ireland for maybe an hour on the computer before he'd ever leave.
Yeah,
leave for the cows.
Yeah, Micheál will be very proud of that.
Yeah.
But it's funny, lads, we call him Danny, isn't it? And everyone knows who we're talking about.
Oh yeah, but
so look, he's doing a brilliant job there.
Great ambassador, but people have learned from that. I remember meeting Sean Barry at Danny's farm walk, right? Made sure himself and his father came up to meet us on the day, discussed the whole day. 2 years later, Sean wins the heavy soil section. Yeah, so you don't forget those kind of moments, right? And I suppose I'll when I'm on the heavy soils, I'll keep going. Paddy, Darren Kerry, and
Spur Roadways.
Absolutely, haven't forgotten that either, right? And I suppose I am partial to the heavy soils program. I suppose I started my career in Teagasc out on that program, right? I suppose so. I haven't forgotten that, and that's what got me into Grassland probably in the first place. But Paddy, and he lands these cows in a paddock, and there's water at one end and water on the other end, and how do you get into this place in the middle that's the driest? And there they are on the day in a wet enough autumn. Here they are grazing, doing a super job, and the access to grass that Paddy did, he brought it even another level beyond what even Danny would do. So those days you don't forget. I suppose I can think back to some of the sheep guys along the way and what they're able to do.
Yeah, we had a brilliant day this year in the sheep. Now we're jumping around a bit and we'll come back in order. But
I know, but sure.
Shane Moore, brilliant winner.
Yes.
Great day, actually.
Yeah.
I was slagging you on this that it was getting dark when we were digging the hole above.
Yeah, but look, some of the sheep and dry stock farmers are part-time, so we do a lot of events in the evening, and I think that works well for us. So we had 2 great events this year in Shane's and in Aiden's in the evening time, just before dark, John. But
John told me the story where he was going around the flashlight on the phone.
It was the last few minutes.
Yes. Myself and 2 flashlights since looking into this hole.
But look,
it was brilliant. It was a great turnout, and
great crowds.
He was a brilliant speaker, John, wasn't he?
Oh, super.
So it was good old cracking him.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the way he was able to do things with sheep and grass, sometimes you'd scratch your head to know how you can do this. And then, his farm,
that was a tough farm.
Yeah, and his farm is fragmented as well. But we saw not just the home farm, we saw the out farm as well, and what was going on there. And it's the harvesting of grass.
The biggest one for that was that, sometimes farmers think that you have to have 100, 200 acres to measure grass. You don't.
Not at all.
That's a big one, it's a big mess.
Completely.
We'll go back then. So we had Eddie, then John Mack, was it?
John McNamara, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Sure, both of them were phenomenal stories, to be honest. Made huge progress. But I can remember from those 2, right? They were measuring grass, I suppose, when they were small, John. I remember that particularly about Eddie, I suppose. He was 16, 17 out doing grass measurement. So it didn't start 2 or 3 years before, and it was a long serving thing. So
one that stuck with me from John was that he pint he made on the day, he was happy to bring his cover per cow down to 140 because he was so comfortable with that years of experience during certain periods of the year, because he knew he could get away with it.
Absolutely, and because you have that measurement, you have that confidence to do that.
Yeah.
Right. And when you're at that level, the harvesting of grass is at the pinnacle of maximising
Yeah,
utilisation.
to Tony Kelly.
It's
Yeah.
everything you talked about there.
Who, John?
So we'll move on.
Was that the guy
We'll
Mikey
move on.
Butler put to?
You were put up that way, Mike Healy. You wouldn't have thought of that line if it wasn't for Mike. So let's go down and give Mike a yellow card before I leave Moorepark.
The Kilkenny people tend to together.
Very appropriate.
Go on.
Who followed on from?
Brian Daniels was. And then we had Caroline Walsh, and then we had Colin last year. Yes.
Yeah, so we had Brian Daniels, another Kilkenny man, really good in Clover. Caroline was exceptional. She was just a really simple system, and what stuck out for me was the work-life balance was a big thing for her, wasn't it, John? And that's key.
Grass allowed her to do all that. The simplicity of the system was what was key. She'd often say to me, you target 10 grazings, John, and then that's the language you speak. I don't aim to achieve 10 grazings, but I get 10 grazings. She put me in my box fairly fast, and rightly so. But all it was for her was, the paddocks are there, the grass is there, we have to graze it, move around the farm, keep the grass right, and then you will achieve the 10 grazings. And that's what really swung it for her. That in that competition that year, she was over 10 in the previous years. Now look, since 10, she's bumped into drought more than once in the last 2 or 3 years, but still it was phenomenal performance. Yes. No,
definitely, and you're right. It's sometimes maybe we're guilty of talking in jargon that we understand and shorthand language because we know what we're talking about, but others mightn't. And then last year, the most recent winner is Colin Doherty. Yeah,
so I suppose, look, Colin farms on dry land down there in Limerick, and it does give an advantage. I don't deny that, and I would have to recognise that, to be fair. But his approach to grazing and how he does it, and he starts out with a very aggressive approach from the spring and then practices that throughout the whole season, and he has been probably a pioneer in terms of getting clover onto farm. He's done all the different techniques, all the different methods, has learned from all that, and brought it to a new level. So it made a difference. So we had the event with him in September. It was a little bit unfortunate that anyway, the summer was drying him, but look, it rained on the day. We were all delighted, even though it lashed. Yes, and look, the farmers made a great recovery since. So
the farm was just coming green really the week before you were there, and it was
so it's just coming out of the drought.
Savage clover and really good milking facilities and simple system as well. Brilliant guy, really good to listen to. You might come on actually at some stage as well. But it was
one farm we can't forget. I think in this, John, because he was always saying it could be done to the man too fair to him, and that's Sean O'Donnell, right? Michael Donovan here would always argue that geography didn't matter when it came to grass production, and he was right? And Sean is. We had a walk this year, the first walk of Grass10 of the Grassland Farm Year competition after COVID, I suppose, in July, and phenomenal performance on the farm, phenomenal day on the farm. It was like going out onto the pitch to start the All Ireland, John. If you understand, I was that superb. Now
the Mayo lads wouldn't.
But he's farming up in Ballina and County Mayo. There's mixed land on the farm. There's some dry, there's some wet, there's some challenging, there's some difficult. But just putting the simple principles in place of how to grow and utilise grass,
exceptional.
Yes, and communicate it in a
simple way.
Yes, and very, very effective.
The day we were there, John, now the weather was as bad as ever. I remember you, Kilkenny, actually, you drove through a funeral. I remember saying that to you, and I was right since anyways, thank God. But we were driving, however, 2 hours with John brought us through a funeral, and I got out and I was like, oh, you've cursed him now, so delighted. I don't know if it was Kilkenny or Cork though, but it was he. But the weather was absolutely cat. And we went up to the out farm, myself and you braved it further than I did, but that was a dry farm, but doing a brilliant job there. We've seen some brilliant farms. So
it's picture perfect stuff.
It's exceptional. Even Daniel Rundle was doing a fantastic job there, and steep ground. There was a hill in that.
Yeah.
You were down with Bridget Carroll.
Bridget Carroll, and Philip Tyndall down in Wexford, two super farmers as well. Bridget was doing a bit there on trying to monitor the slurry, wasn't it, John?
Absolutely,
because technology.
Yeah, they had a strong focus on the slurry management of that farm, but not just health and safety, which she got an award for with her son Michael, but also on their approach to slurry management farm to get the best out of it.
That's right. That's right.
It was impressive. Yeah.
And Philip did like that, the soil fertility and the story behind that on the farm.
So it was a purchased farm, ex-tillage, P's and K's on the floor,
and attention to detail there on grazing,
and the farm is transformed,
and some crowds at his farm walk as well there.
So the farm is transformed into grass production. If you ever wanted to sell P and K story, Philip was it.
Yeah.
Of all the farms we've done in terms of transforming the soil fertility story, that's the one that stands out. We've had many events and many farms, but that one stands out. See, most of the rest of the other farms, they were in dairying for a while or converted from dry stock or did something different. This farm was just a little bit on the floor starting off, and himself and his father just turned this around.
And they both talk about it, and one of the other probably issues at the time was actually organic matter, and that was a big issue on the farm. They've built that over time, and they talk about what soil fertility has done for them over time.
No, it was a brilliant competition, and we're in the midst of judging for the next winner.
2022, yeah.
2022, very exciting. Or this year, sorry, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's very exciting. And
but again, now, like before, we're a bit like Shaw's. John, we're almost nationwide on this one.
Yeah, that's a fact.
So,
there's a big spread.
We have Mayo, Galway, Clare, Kerry, Cork, across to Wicklow. We have to go to Meath, Roscommon, back into the Midlands as well. So yeah, it's good coverage.
John, obviously 2022 is happening, but say for next year, and I think what we hear time and time again on farmers, that farmers probably think they're not good enough to enter, and they're waiting a few years. But there's plenty farms out there that are good enough, and enter, put the name in for it.
Absolutely. And one of the most common entrants into competition is those who are new entrants to farming, be it dairy or dry stock. And, because they're new entrants, I suppose they're hungry for technology, and then they want an appraisal of how things are going. We've had some great days with some of those farmers along the way, and people who started out, with minimal, and we have more of them this year, and striving to make good progress, would learn a lot from it. It's all a learning curve. I'll stay parochial here if that's all right, John, and our other Mr. Birmingham out the road who won an award. Yeah, but started milk production just after quotas went, and
that's all right.
Mike's coming on to this as well, John, because he's a brilliant story.
Absolutely.
Yeah, brilliant guy, so man as well.
Yes, and but his farm is facing north a bit, which is tricky. Dry to be fair now, but high, but facing north. Right, put all the principles in place. Some people say that it takes more than just the principles to the farm, but in fairness, he did. And is now very much down the clover pathway and having great success with it.
We were at the Grass 150 group. Mike is in cows how many years, and now he's already gone into the clover.
He's I suppose he started 15.
So he's gone to 7 years, and now he's already gone into the clover. Like, it's some story. And John, listen, we have to wrap up. Unfortunately, we just finished one last question. TJ, Henry, or DJ? You could only pick one of them now. Who would you go for?
That's not fair now.
But sure, you have to answer.
Oh, good God. What a question.
Yeah, go on.
Right. During the week, anyway, I'll answer it this way. So, people were arguing about Roy Keane or Mick McCarthy now.
This is a real Teagasc answer.
I think both of them were quite talented and blame the FAI. Yeah. But anyway...
So who are you picking? If you could only pick one now, you only pick one line out to win the county final for the borough. Who would you pick?
I'd love to say Brian Cody, but given the club I come from, I can't say that, right? Because they all. Yeah. Anyway, oh good God, thank you. I won't pick John.
You have to pick one.
No, I don't.
John, it's not.
He might be more familiar with the car hurdles.
Well, Can you name any of those? No, I should look. They're three phenomenal hurlers, I suppose. But anyway, I suppose we're in the we're in the current era, and given that TJ is of
still playing.
Yes, and is of an agricultural background, if that's all right to say.
That's good. Yeah,
so we'll
I picked DJ, to be honest. If we could, I think he was probably the most skillful out of them naturally.
The Cork guys would give you a hard time over DJ. That's why I couldn't say him.
Oh yeah,
right? Just because he was.
I go Henry Saw just even up.
We won't insult anyone. I'm sure they're all listening. Is that?
He's called a king, and we'll leave it at that. Is that all right?
Okay, John. Thanks a million, John.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. We're delighted to have you on. I'm sure we'll catch up on a roundup next year. We'll chat up with John and Joe as well going forward. So thanks a million.
Thank you, John, and thank you, David, for having me on. I'd have to say I wasn't exactly looking forward to it now because he wouldn't spare me. But anyway, look, I hope people got something out of it, and wish them all the best for 2023 in all their grazing endeavours.
Thanks so much to John Maher, the Cork Cat, for joining us on the Sod Pod, a masterclass in knowledge, passion and solutions. Mind yourself out there. Farm smart, farm safe. Hey, thanks for listening to the Sod Pod. We hope you enjoyed it. To find out more, head over to www.grasslandagro.ie or check out our social channels: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn and YouTube. That's all for this episode. See you next time.